Hearts of Iron 4. This is Paradox's most popular game at the moment, and for good reason. A game set in World War II, it has familiar faces that are known to many. The combat within the game is in my opinion incredibly dynamic, with so many different ways of trying to get behind the enemy front line. I personally love the paratroopers, and encircling with tanks. Today though, we are going to focus on the start dates of the game. Have you ever wondered why in the game there are two start dates in 1939 and 1936? Most people I know play in 1936, so today we're going to analyse why Paradox might have decided to pick this as a start date. The boring and fairly straightforward answer I've heard is that it's 100 years after the start date of Victoria 2, and that's why Paradox decided to choose it. For me though, this doesn't exactly make sense, and it's not like they choose this start date if World War II occurred 5 years later. Let's therefore get into some of the historic reasons as to why the 1936 start date was chosen. I'd also like to thank you so much for 100,000 subscribers, it really means a lot. The first reason I believe why Paradox decided to add the 1936 start date is the Italian Ethiopian War, and this is probably the main reason for the start date being chosen, often seen as one of the episodes that prepared the way for World War II. This is because the war demonstrated the ineffectiveness of a League of Nations, when League decisions were not supported by the great powers like Germany or the USA. Going back to the Ethiopian-Italian War, the League of Nations condemned the Italian invasion in 1935 and voted to impose economic sanctions on the aggressor. However, the sanctions remained ineffective because of the general lack of support. Although Mussolini's aggression was condemned by the British, who had a stake in East Africa, the other major powers had no real interest in opposing him, and these powers did not really have anything to significantly gain in doing so. Another reason why I believe this 1936 start date was chosen is because it's a great war for beginners in Hearts of Iron 4. Taking out Ethiopia doesn't require large amounts of skill or designing complex units to burst through the Ethiopian lines. Instead, it only requires Italian brute force to pump through and take the country within a few months. I'm sure Paradox thought this sort of war is great for getting new players to learn with. Historically, as you can imagine, the Italians crushed the Ethiopians and subjugated them. Do you, however, think this is the main reason for the start date being chosen? Let me know in the comments. Another lesser reason for why I believe the start date of 1936 was chosen is due to the Spanish Civil War, which occurred in the same year. In terms of Hearts of Iron 4, this allowed you to learn the game when sending volunteers, and you were able to control a small amount of units within this war, in order to help either the Spanish fascists or communists. I quite enjoy being one of the major powers and sending volunteers to either side to influence the game, and create alternative history for yourself. In terms of its impact on World War II, some historians refer to it as a Second World War in training, a playoff game before the championship match between Team Axis and Team Allies, a few years later. The Spanish Civil War began in July 1936, and there was a significant ideology clash within Spain. I'd also say it's definitely an interesting event to have in the game, allowing you to change the course of history. So those are the two reasons for why I believe the 1936 start date was chosen. But are there any other start dates that could potentially be chosen? Some important events that occurred before 1936 that led to World War II is firstly the fact that Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and essentially takes full control of Germany. However, this start date may be too far from the actual start date of World War II, and given how long it takes for time to pass in the game, it may just take too long for you to actually get any real action. Perhaps then, a later start date can be chosen, like 1937, when Japan invades China, although I'd say that having an alternative start date too close to 1939 could mean that the player cannot make much alternative history for himself. Some Hearts of Iron 4 players may want to make the United Kingdom a full monarchy or complete communist. This ultimately is what makes the game fun. Who doesn't love a bit of alternative history? Just look at the mods. What do you guys think though? Are you happy with the Hearts of Iron 4 start dates? And can you think of any other reason as to why they choose the 1936 start date? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you around, and goodbye for now. Shout out to our Patreons: J Erickson321, Shadow Singer, Jado52, Kargon, Flyerton, Henriki, Redguard76, Xiaomi, and Charlie Demerel. Your support means a lot, guys.